If you think your thoughts and opinions do not matter, or if you fear taking the next steps towards a better you, or if you allow other people to take free reign of your life, now is the time to put an end to these limiting beliefs. Welcome to Change Your View, a podcast that will help you take back control to have a well-lived life and the conviction that your life is to have meaning. Join Haseena Shaheed-Jackson in discussions aimed at overcoming the limitations of physical sight to see with spirit, hope, and faith. Each episode will empower you to develop the courage and self-assurance to go after the life you want. Here is your host, Haseena.
Hello, Kristi. Thank you so much for being here with me today for our next episode of Change Your View with H.S. Jackson.
Hello. It's so nice of you to have me here today. I'm so excited to talk to you.
I am too, and you have a powerful story that I know that our viewers are just going to be inspired by. You transitioned from a 30-year career in teaching and counseling to become an artist, to follow your true passion. Tell me a little bit about how you started in that direction.
Okay, I'm going to go back. I'll go back actually long time ago when I was 18 years old. I did go to art school for 1 year. I went to college and I didn't stay in art school. I did end up having a child and then having that child got me into early childhood education. So over those years then I was working in daycare centers and going to school. I eventually became the director of a daycare center. Then I got my master's degree, my teaching certificate, became a preschool for all teacher, which is the state-funded preschool for all program, and eventually became a teacher coach. I was very focused on that career for a very long time. And I was very passionate about my career. I'm very passionate about the needs of young children. I really do believe, children are the future. What we do with them when they're young really determines what will happen with our whole society as they get older. So it's it's the most important time of life. And then when COVID happened and just a lot of policies about how we treat young children started to change. And I just felt so strongly that things like isolating children, just keeping them at home, doing their education through computers, to me, it just seemed to go against what childhood is meant to be. And I think that the consequences of that could be really very severe. I think that in time we'll see. We'll see what happens with this generation. I lost it, earpod. But, I think it's something that we still just really need to think very carefully about what we're doing with our youngest kids. Through COVID, all of us, it was a traumatic time for everyone. But as adults, we know what life was like without all of that. Young kids, they just are growing up in that fearful environment that has been created by a virus, I suppose. But because I just felt so strongly, I ended up about a little over a year ago leaving that job. I had been in the position, or at the place that I worked, I had been for 15 of those 30 years. And I had actually, worked towards being able to have the position I was in, which was training other teachers. And when I left the job, actually, my husband and I, we didn't really have a very solid plan financially. I didn't know what was going to come next or where my life was going to go. I just knew that I couldn't agree with things that were happening and that I needed to take my passion somewhere else. So, very soon after I left the job, I took a job at a small daycare center in Park Forest, Illinois, that's in a church and is a wonderful place. It's the kind of place you would want to take your children. They care about kids. They're very kind to the children there. They really care about seeing the kids successful. So just being in that environment was so good for me. And while I was working there, and it was hard work because I'm getting older and being crawling around on the floor with 2-year-olds, it's getting more and more difficult. But I found so much joy there. But while I was there, I always have been a person that made things, that creates things. Generally, I make gifts for people. I make all of my Christmas gifts myself for many, many years, obviously, my whole life. So I started posting photos of my art online while I was working at the daycare center. And, that I wasn't making a lot of money, but it was enough for us to make ends meet, for our family to be okay, for us to pay our bills, and we had to cut back on a lot of things. But we learned that we didn't need a lot of those things and that was going to be okay. So, but then last June, very, very suddenly, my very healthy and active mother got very sick. She was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer just out of the blue. She also was diagnosed at the same time with 2 other types of cancer, and it was what they call a turbo cancer, which means that everything was just growing very, very fast. Um, and so she went from being just extremely vibrant and active, and within 2 weeks couldn't walk, was completely debilitated, and needed 24-hour a day care. So I suddenly quit that job that I had found. I left the kids, which I still have some guilt about, but I went and took care of my mother because that was what I knew I was supposed to do. And again, for my family, this was then more loss of income, which was another huge leap of faith, just trusting in God that we would be okay, that this was what I was supposed to do, and that He would make sure that we were okay. And He did. It was very, very hard, my mother's illness. She suffered quite a bit, but there were also really beautiful times while she was sick. And just I see that time that I had with her, that I actually got to know her in ways that I never, ever in 51 years knew my mother at all before. And will forever be grateful for that time. She passed in December, so for 6 months she was very sick, but she did pass in December. And then at her service, an artist from the Union Street Gallery in Chicago Heights, who was a friend of my mom's, came up to me and was talking to me about seeing some of this art that I had been posting online. And then the conversation was interrupted. I went home, and a few days later, I was thinking about how she had said this to me. So I looked up Union Street Gallery online and found that there was a photography class here at the gallery. And that I thought, well, that is something I need. I need photography because I'm trying to put this art online and I'm not that great at the pictures, which would help a lot to be a photographer a little bit. So I signed up for this photography class and I came out here, and, I am still grieving. But the photographer, Sunjata Johnson, he started talking about light, about, how you create a picture just using light and just showing us, how to make things look different with the light. And I just suddenly saw things in a different way. I suddenly saw.
You've named so many things, though, Kristi. Let me just say, so many things that you unpacked. First of all, let me just say this. One is the leap of faith.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What does that really look like? You said you just had the leap of faith. So each time, first you were.
Each time.
So you were so you hear a voice or something in your spirit. What's that leap of faith?
The way I can explain it only is that I'm just doing whatever presents itself to me to do. So, when I found out my mom was sick, I just knew that was what I was supposed to do. I was supposed it's a voice or just a feeling, but it's a voice, I suppose, that says you're supposed to take care of her. And I knew that that was what I was supposed to do. Um, when I saw this photography class online, it just, it was the exact thing that I knew that I needed. I knew that it was what I was supposed to do. And I came here, and this was where I was supposed to come.
So, what about facing the unknown and the uncertainties? I mean, how do you conquer that fear? Because there's fear with that. You know,
Oh, there is definitely fear with that.
how do you
And
conquer?
I'm going to go back to COVID with this. COVID when we were first told about COVID, and it was so scary because there was this virus, this invisible enemy really that was coming to get us. There was nothing we could do. We couldn't see it, we couldn't avoid it. We could try to avoid it, and we did try to avoid it. Um, but one day, this thought came into my head, and I thought, what is it that we're all so scared of, though? Because if it's death, weren't we all always going to die? If it's suffering, weren't we all always going to suffer? If it's so, I think those thoughts help me just let go of fear of what the future is and look at life as paths that are put in front of you.
So it
And you
sounds,
can,
so it sounds like you're saying, so it's almost like saying, so what? It's going to happen. I can't stop it. So why am
yeah,
I going
and it might go wrong.
right? So
It might all fall apart,
right. So you
but
just say you just have to say why not instead of well I have to put the brakes on because of fear is telling me I can't go this way. Instead you have to say press forward, press through
hmm
it, and just keep going.
and then you don't know what you might find.
Yes.
Um, Yeah, when I go back, so I took the photography class, and really within weeks of taking that first photography class, I had come to the gallery to show some of the work I had been doing. I was in one of the shows. They encouraged me to rent studio space. I applied for studio space. Now I'm a studio artist at this gallery, which all of that, I have no idea still where that's going to take me.
But sounds like to
I
me what
just know
you're
it's
saying
taking me somewhere forward.
But sounds like what you're saying is if you take the right steps, if you take the steps that's putting you in alignment with your purpose, because sounds like that's what you're doing,
Hmm.
is that the rest will fall into place. And
Yes.
the resources will come into action, the places that you're supposed to be will happen, and the mindset will follow. So all those things will come into play if you just press forward and move ahead.
Yeah, and look for the light. Look for the things that will put you in the place that you belong, which might not be the place that you want to go,
Hmm.
but you have to look for the place that you belong. Because I think every one of us was sent here with a purpose, but life is confusing. Life can take you in all different directions, and you don't know why or where it'll all go. You never know. Never know. Even though you can be safe, 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 you don't know where it's all going to go.
Right.
So, look for the things that just feel like you belong there.
Mm.
Like you feel like this is what I'm supposed to do. And you will be guided. You'll end up where you're supposed to be, I suppose.
Yes. I love that. So one of the things, and I know about your story because we've been friends for a while,
Hmm.
is that you said, you were just doing regular crocheting, and I shouldn't say regular, but the hats and the
Yeah.
scarves. But then the light bulb went off, and you start doing pieces of art. How did that come about?
It actually happened. Happened while my mom was sick. And for people who crochet will understand what I'm talking about, but crochet, it's a very repetitive thing. You're just doing stitches over and over and over again. So it's like a meditation. you have to just focus on doing this one thing and you're just counting your stitches and you're moving in the same way. Um, and while my mom was sick, I spent a lot of time just waiting, waiting at doctor's offices, waiting while she was asleep, waiting, for this treatment to end. And so I was just bringing this with me everywhere. And I just also, I had more time on my hands than I've had for many years because working gets in the way of those things. And I just started thinking of, different ways that I've crocheted since I was a little girl. My grandma taught me when I was little. So I know very well how to do it, but I started thinking of different ways to make shapes, and I just started testing it out and inventing as I was going. That's what I'm still doing now, is just figuring out how to use the yarn and the hook to make new things. And right now, goodness. So I started making hats. I've always made hats. So some of the sculptures I have made are hats, but they are sculptures at the same time. So in the gallery here at Union Street right now, there's one on display that is the old stump. So it is a hat that is crocheted, but it is also a sculpture of a stump. Some of these are behind me.
Well, let me just.
Some of the ones behind me will be at another gallery in
Let me
Crete
interrupt
coming
you for
up
one
soon.
second because we keep talking about Union Street Gallery. Tell us what Union Street Gallery is so that people will know.
I will. Yeah, Union Street Gallery is in Chicago Heights, Illinois. A lot of people seem to not know about it, but it's actually been in Chicago Heights since 1995. And it was originally on Union Street, and now it's on Otto Boulevard, where it's been for about 20 years, I believe. So there's a gallery downstairs. It's 2 stories. So we have art shows with local artists, with national artists, international artists that display their art here. And there are also studios of working artists. So we have, this is my studio that we're in right now. So I come here to crochet, to create these things, to sell what I'm making, it's my office, to run my art business, to make connections. And then there's many kinds of artists here. So we have several photographers that work here out of Union Street that do all sorts of photography. Their studios are right here in Chicago Heights, but they also work with designers and they're in magazines. We have a couple of videographers that are here at Union Street. We have a weaver. We have 3 pastel artists. We have painters. We have 2 ceramics potters that do the clay. So we have a patch lady who does leather and patches. So we have all sorts of artists that are here actively working. So people can come in. The studios are open during our open hours. You can meet the artists, see them at work. You can buy work directly from artists that are right here in the community. And it's open to families. It's really a great educational experience for kids to see, and young adults who would be interested in art as a career can come and meet artists that are doing art as a career and find out how to do that, because it's not that easy to figure out that whole world. So yeah, it is really a great place. I recommend to everybody. Every time we have a new show, there's a free reception with refreshments and wine and artists that people can talk to, and the studios are always open. So that's always a great afternoon for a family or a date. All kinds of things going on here.
A couple of things that you brought up during our discussions that I want to ask you about, because I truly go back to the children and stifling their creativity, which is one of the things you're going to be offering. We could talk about is that you're going to be providing art classes, crochet classes for students, for small children. And one of the things that's instrumental is that we have to aid them in that early stages of development of fostering creativity instead of snuffing it out, because when we do that, then we hold them back from really having those aspirations of wanting to do more and become more, because we're shutting them down to say, no, what you think and what you want to do is not viable. Instead, you're going to follow this. So going back to the classes you're going to offer, what made you see this as a bridge to that creativity? What sparked this thought?
Well, this just combines my career in education and this current career in art and this wonderful place, which is really a wonderful resource for kids, all just came together at the same time. And I've been concerned about kids. I see so many kids just staring at their phones these days, just standing there staring at their phones. And if the kids aren't creating and inventing new things now, they won't be able to do that in the future. And that's going to impact humanity. So I don't know, these are all the types of things that I tend to worry about. And when I walked into this place, there's a huge classroom. I just saw this as such a great opportunity to, provide a safe space where children and young people and adults can show who they are on the inside through just healthy, creative expression. Art is a form of communication. That's what it does for people. And I think that it just sparked. There was just a spark that this could be the place where this could happen. And this, I think, is a need now for our communities. All this stuff went away for kids during COVID. They just lost all their activities, lost everything like this. So it's time to bring it back and get childhood back to being childhood again and see where they can go with their little minds.
Yeah. And how can a person sign up for the class? They just go to is it Union Street?
Yeah, you can go to the Union Street Gallery website. Signing up for the classes is under the store, or they can actually email me. It's Mama Earth Design Shop, one word, at gmail.com, and I can send them the information. And yes, classes will be ongoing.
Okay, so unionstreetgallery.com, probably.
Org.
So unionstreetgallery.org. Or what's your email one more time?
It's Mama Earth, MAMAEARTH, Design Shop, one word, at gmail.com.
All right. So the other thing that really hit me is we briefly talked about your mom and her death. And it seems a lot of times we allow our pain and grief to really place us in the corner, and we cower, and we don't really know how to overcome it. But you found a way to overcome it with your art. What made you go in that direction? What pushed you in that direction? Was it a voice? Was it just a feeling? I mean, how did you know that this is where I'm supposed to go with my pain instead of just sitting here wallowing in it? Instead, use it in a positive way.
That's a hard question. I think, as a teacher, I'm going to say, when you're a teacher of young children, you can't let things get you down because you have to be kind and energetic and engaging no matter what's happening in the world. So that's something I learned a long time ago to be able to do. I was once in a classroom in Calumet City, and someone was shot outside the back door of our classroom. But because we have these little kids there, we can't, and the ambulances came. It was separate from what we were doing, but there was an alley. So we have to keep singing songs, We have to keep the kids engaged in what we're doing. We have to make sure that they aren't in fear of what's happening around them and can still enjoy their childhood. So that's something that I've done for a long time because of that. And creating things has always helped me just to keep my mind sort of quiet. Just when you sit and you're creating, you just can let your thoughts wander and open your mind up to whatever enters it, whatever voices come in, wherever they come from. So I was crocheting anyway, and yeah, I was having a lot of emotions, and I just started pouring my emotions into what I was creating. And new things started coming out. And I could recognize that, I could feel that this was something new coming out of me, and it was coming from pain.
So you
But
funneled your pain into a positive place to help you.
and I will say every day while my mom was sick, I prayed for strength and humility. I think that's what I did while I crocheted. It's what I did while I walked my dogs. It's what I did throughout the day. And, that's what was given back to me.
Mm. That's so profound. So one of the things that I want to possibly leave people with, because it's not being afraid of transitions. And you've had quite a few transitions in the last couple of years. I mean, starting with COVID, because you were really entrenched in a job for 30 years. Then you
Mm-hmm.
transitioned to a daycare center. Then you transitioned to helping your mom. How did a lot of times we don't want to accept that we need to transition, but you didn't have that problem. You kept moving, and you kept moving because you knew, it sounds like to me, that the voice was saying, or whatever was in your spirit was saying, you're going in the right way, follow me.
Mm-hmm.
How can you, is that how you saw it? I mean, that's the whole thing with
Oh, definitely. And I think still now, I just sometimes, sometimes I think, am I crazy? What am I doing here? Why don't I go get a real job? But, and the voice keeps saying, you're doing what you're supposed to do. Just keep doing it. But I will say that, I think as far as fear is concerned, I'm now more afraid of not following that voice. Because if I hadn't, like I wouldn't be here now, and I'm so happy that I'm here now. So if I had not followed that voice and just kept doing what I was doing and accepting whatever came with it because that's where I needed to be, because that's, you got to have your job, you have to have that security, you have to have your insurance, I wouldn't be here now doing this. And this is so much more exciting than that was,
all right.
wherever it goes. I think that we'll be okay.
And that's what you keep saying to yourself, that all will be well.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to tell us anything about the art pieces behind you? Do you have a parting thought and comment that you want to leave with the listeners today as well?
Yeah. Well, let me see if I can bring one a little bit closer here. This is my newest piece, which, let's see, can you see it? Yeah.
Oh,
This
yes.
is my newest piece. We talked a lot today about fear, and this is actually called collective fear. But what it is about is how the media
So
keeps
moving
showing
around. Oh,
us.
wait a minute. Moving around. Is that Mickey Mouse part of it? The Mickey.
That's a mask.
Okay.
It
Okay.
is. If you see the photographs, you would understand that part. But yeah,
Really?
but it's
Okay.
about
Okay.
it was my COVID. It's a COVID piece.
Okay.
So, but it's about how all sides of the media, not whatever side you agree with politically, but all sides just kind of keep showing us things to be afraid of,
Hmm.
and how that affects your mind.
Hmm.
So that's what that piece is about.
So the top
And
part is like, so that's like your brain up at the top, looks like that's what
mm-hmm,
you're saying. And then
yeah,
what are those pieces like, supposed to be like spikes, or explain
yeah.
it to me?
Yeah, that's like the messages coming down, making us really afraid and divided from one another because we're so busy fighting with each other about who believes in what, that it's made us so divided in the past few years. So we need to get rid of all that and just start talking to each other.
Hmm. Unity.
So that's my newest piece, and that is all crochet.
So if you had a parting piece of advice that you want to leave with our audience, because we've talked about fear, transitioning, the leap of faith, for someone who's who doesn't know what to do to take that first step, what can you tell them what to do to take that first step?
I'm going to tell my mom, when she was at the end of her life, she was on hospice at home, and she was only on hospice for 10 days. And she was in a lot of pain, so she was on a lot of very heavy medication. She was in and out of it. And a friend of mine came over and was holding my mom's hand, and my mom opened her eyes and said to her, "I've always said that God's hand is right there. You just need to reach out and take it." And then she went back to sleep. And that's what I would say. He's right there. If there's something that you're afraid to do, maybe that's the thing you're supposed to be doing. You know, being an artist is a scary thing. It's so scary to make something that comes from inside of you because it's attached to your feelings and your emotions, and it's really expressing who you are on the inside. And people might reject that. People might not like it. People might not buy it. People might not understand it. So, but if you're in fear of all of those things, you can't chase your dreams. So you have to just create what it is that you feel you're supposed to create, no matter what happens, no matter how the world reacts. Because what else can you do?
So in place of fear, you just have to go, so what? You're not going to be in control here, and you just move forward. Well, I thank you for your
take that hand.
Yes, well, thank you. I love what the last thought that your mom had was to just take that hand. Thank you for that, Kristi. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes.
Thank you for being my friend.
And you will be back. All right.
This concludes this episode of Change Your View. Let this conversation help you navigate life's challenges, emerging from that seemingly endless pause that you are experiencing. Regain command of your own path and resist being boxed in. Visit hsjackson.com for more inspiring and eye-opening discussions. Stop walking in the shadows of other individuals. No longer allow inferior perspectives to brainwash you. Do not be forgotten. You have the authority and power over you. Make the most of your abilities. Thank you for listening. Until next time.